Plus de drosse et ça suffit, c'est là, that's it. This week, as you know, if you watched last episode, I watched the Innocents with Dirty Hands, or
Les innocents aux mains sales.
That little intro was let me just get into it. The movie starts and, it's just like some nice scenes of Paris. And then you see this beautiful woman lying naked in the grass. And you see a kite flying around. And it falls out of the sky. And this man comes through the woods. And he sees that it's on top of the naked woman. Right on her bottom. And so he's like awkwardly says, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's my kite." And it's at this moment that I realize not only did I have a very hard time finding this movie at all, but the one version I was able to find, not in English, not subtitled. So I spent a really long time trying to think of what to do about this. That's why this episode may not have the best production and all that, and why my hair looks so bad. I mean, you can really see how stringy it looks. Ugh, I'm sorry for that. I searched Amazon, I searched eBay, I searched Google, trying to find anywhere I could stream it or rent it or buy it or get the DVD or anything. I did find like a couple of PAL DVDs that would like ship from France and get here in like a couple weeks. So I might do that and then revisit this review. We'll talk about that later, or if I just do it. So I was trying to think like, okay, so what's the right thing to do? Do I watch another movie by this director? But that's not necessarily a crime movie. Everything that I searched about like this movie, there's a lot of like box sets. There had been a lot of box sets of like movies that Romy Schneider, the main actress, was in. So I was like, do I watch a movie of hers? And then I was thinking, well, I have to watch another crime movie because the whole thing was that I picked a crime movie, not that I picked whatever the director's name is movie, right? So I didn't know what to pick. And I was like, so should I watch all three and then like crumple them? And then I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like the spirit of this journey is just like watching random movies and taking them in for what they are. So this is how this movie was available. So this is how I watched it. I think it was also missing like a little bit of like whatever the theatrical version had. I don't know. It was really hard to find information on it. So having seen this movie only in French, I said, here's what I'll do. I'm not going to read the Wikipedia article. I'm just going to watch the movie and try to figure out what happened. And then just go from there. So this is my review of The Innocents with Dirty Hands. It's obviously going to be different than my other reviews, but I don't know. I think it was I've always wondered if you could watch a movie that's in a different language without subtitles and figure out what's going on. And I think that there are certainly genres where it would work better. I think like a comedy probably wouldn't work as well unless it's like a really physical one. A crime movie could be like tough if there's like a lot of big twists and reveals. So let's see how I did. Okay, so these two people meet with the kite. He gets the kite back and he's kind of checking her out, and she like rolls over to show herself off even more to him. And they seem to be into each other. Then we go to another scene where he's like come over to her house and they're like talking, and then this other guy comes in and he's just like drinking and he seems really sad, and I don't know what's going on. Oh, I wrote down what I believe their names to be. I think that the main female, I believe her name is Julie. I think that the man who was crying was Louis or Lewis, and I think that the man with the kite is Jeff. There were some other characters whose names I didn't catch at all, but I feel pretty good about this. I saw in the credits that there was someone named Sun. Don't know who that was. So the guy is drinking, and we're not totally sure like what's going on with him. He's just like, he comes in. Louis comes in looking like a village person. He's just sad. He starts like drinking and he starts laughing really hard and he goes to bed. And then Julie turns off all the lights and gets down on the carpet. And I thought she was playing dead, but then her and Jeff end up having sex. I was like, okay, I see what's going on here. Then we cut to another scene where they're naked in a bed, not just on a rug. And I noticed they were eating grapes and he was like feeding them to her, and they were like really crunchy grapes. And I noticed that she had a wedding ring on and he didn't. So I was like, oh, that might be something to watch out for. And then a title card pops up telling us that some time has passed, I believe. My guess was that it said 3 summers plus some. I didn't, I was able to read it, but I didn't want to Google Translate it because this was all about me figuring it out on my own, if I could. So then Louis shows back up and it seems like he was trying to sell Julie a car, but I think he actually had bought a new car and was showing it to her or something. So then Louis says that he loves her. We see a kite. Louis shows back up. He's drinking even more. He's just like totally out of it. He seems like totally sad. Jeff like pretends to rob him. So this is around when I was like, oh, okay, I see what's happening, because they were like being like really secretive and quiet, and I was like, she's married to him, but this Jeff guy is her lover. So Louis goes to bed. She talks to Jeff a bit, and then she like goes into Louis' room, and she's like looking at a club, and she's thinking about hitting him. She's not sure, and then she comes back and she does do it, and she just puts a bag in the room and walks away. Doesn't look at him, doesn't check to see if he's dead or anything. She's just kind of in shock. She washes off the club, puts it back, goes downstairs. The body gets taken away. She sees through the window. She gets a note saying, I believe it's from Jeff, saying, I love you. We're going to get through this together. She calls the cops, tells them that she needs help quickly. A couple of detectives come. They're kind of questioning her, trying to figure out what's going on. Oh, they're like snooping around. She's getting very nervous. She has a flashback to remembering a belt that Louis was wearing. I don't know what that had to do with I'm sure that in some way, knowing what the French means, knowing what the French was, that would help. There would be some clue that's helpful. I don't know what it was. They look on a boat. They find some blood, and everything else is just empty. The safe is empty. She gets another letter saying, we'll be together soon, mon chéri, which means my cherry or something like that. She sends a letter. She goes to the bank to ask about, I think, the money from Louis or whatever, because I think he's now presumed to be dead. And then some detectives show up and they're like, okay, let's go to the safe deposit box with you. And they open it and it's totally empty. So she's not totally sure what's going on with that. She meets with some guy. Oh, one of the detectives looks like Kurt Vonnegut, so that's how I always remembered him. This was a tough challenge for me because I'm really bad at remembering faces in movies. Someone could be in one scene and then in the very next scene, and I don't remember that it's the same person. So it was helpful for me to be like, oh, that guy looks like Kurt Vonnegut. She meets with some guy. I don't know who he was. As the movie went on, I thought maybe that's her dad, but this is the big question mark for me, is who this guy is, and he'll come back later. But they're just kind of having lunch, chatting. He seems like he's trying to console her. The detectives are really closing in on her. They're just physically right up next to her. They're asking her if she's had a sexual relationship with anyone. I think they're asking about Jeff. I'm not totally sure. Later on, we learned that his last name is Mahler or something like that. Mahler. Mahler's German though, right? And then I recognized that I heard that earlier, and I thought it was them saying something was bad. So I think that they were referring to Jeff. As they're asking about that, she visualizes a car crashing off of a cliff, which I guess is what they did to his car. I don't know. Again, I'm not totally sure what these flashbacks are. And they found an earring that I guess was big evidence. So I think she goes to talk to a lawyer. They go off. I think she's talking to a detective or something, And then a lawyer comes in and they go and talk for a little bit. And then the detective is like, okay, here's all the evidence we have against you. Here's what we're going to charge you with, I think. This is where it gets a little hazy. My handwriting is really bad. It's like really, really bad. There's like a really weird cut between when she's talking to who I believe was telling her what the charges would be, and then she's back at her home, and it's like just really tonally weird. I might include it. And then she walks inside and she sees Louis. And also, like, there are some other weird cuts here, so I thought maybe it's a dream. Because it's like he's standing in front of her, and he has this like really big flashy medallion that he's wearing early on that we see again. So it's like, oh, that's him. Because at first she thinks it's Jeff. But then it like cuts so that he's like behind her. But I think it was just a weird cut because he was still alive, and he's like, hey, I saw you having sex with Jeff. I know what was happening. When he left that night, I hit him in the head and put him in the bed. And then he's the guy who you clubbed. I took him to the boat, and I've been having him write you letters this whole time, like at gunpoint. So it's like, oh shit, this is crazy. And he's like yelling at her, and it's like pretty intense. And she like gets down on the floor, and she like pulls up her dress to flash him. And they have sex, and it's pretty weird because, you know, he faked his death because she was going to murder him. Not the healthiest relationship. She wakes up like screaming. And then it cuts to like there's some weird sport thing going on where the detectives are, and they're like, oh, we need to go talk. So they go to this restaurant, and they're like talking for a really long time and like drinking a lot. And it's just, I couldn't really figure out what was going on in that scene. The detectives show up at her house, and Louise upstairs, and she like sort of dances around it, and she gets them to leave. Somehow she gets Louis to go, or Louis and her decide to go to like this weird little shack house, and that's where the guy who I think is her dad is. And he seems like kind of surprised that Louis is alive, but not really. But it didn't seem like he was on Louis' side, so I wasn't totally sure what was going on. And then Jeff walks in with a gun, and he's like pointing it at Louis. He's gonna shoot him. Julie goes over and kisses Jeff. Jeff and Louis together make Julie, kind of. So that's interesting to think about. Anyway, they pull out a second gun, threaten the guy. Then Jeff and the dad leave, and like Louis looks like he's dying, but he wasn't shot or anything. So I think he's just like having a heart attack or something. And then the detectives are like, oh, it was Jeff. We're going to go get him. So a car comes. Julie runs out. A car comes. It's Jeff. She gets in. Then they drive to the house, and then he's like yelling at her, I think because she was back with Louis or because she hit him. I don't know exactly why. And then he just starts ripping her clothes off and is raping her. And that's the moment that the detectives show up and like take him away. And they're like, oh, he's the one who did it. So this leaves Julie clean-handed in the end. And she's back at her house, and she just hears crazy noises, and she thinks that she is like something's outside, but we don't see. We just see her like turn and look, and it's just dark outside. Yeah, so that is The Innocents with Dirty Hands. It's complicated to talk about a crime movie. It's more complicated to talk about one that you didn't hear or read subtitles for, but I think that's a pretty good. I think I got most of the major points. I don't know that knowing if that guy was her dad or not would really change all that much, so I think I basically nailed it. This is going to be a tough one to talk about pros and cons with, so that's why I feel okay that I've been recording for 18 minutes talking about what happens in the movie. The pros, I think like there are some interesting shots. Some like it's a French movie from the 70s, I think. So there's like some really nice, like long, lingering shots of just like beautiful stuff. Julie has a lot of just gorgeous outfits. So yeah, it was really nice to look at because I wasn't picking up much of the auditory information. The twists and turns, even without being able to hear it, it was interesting because you could tell the scenes where it's like the detectives are coming over and she's like Why are you questioning me instead of looking for my husband? So it's kind of interesting to see how those scenes are universal, and how much of it I was able to pick up on. I was joking that I nailed it, but I think I did I got most of what happened in the movie. Yeah, so that was a lot of the pros. Some of the cons, it had some of the worst sound editing I've ever heard. The sounds of their steps were always so loud, like when they were just walking on like gravel. It's like. I'll try to include a clip here if I have time and remember. The other thing was, well, I mean, it's hard to say, right? But some of the cuts made it unclear what was happening, and I wasn't sure what the flashbacks meant. And I'm not sure with understanding the language if it would have been any better, but I can only take the movie for how I saw it. So those are my comments on that. It feels wrong to rate it, right? Because I didn't, like, I'm saying I took the movie as it was, but I didn't see it how the director would ask me to see it, or how it was intended to be understood. So that being said, I'll give my entertainment like a 6 out of 10, because it's hard watching a movie where you can't understand what's happening, and it was a worthwhile experience, I think, but not something I would do again. Okay, I'm looking now on Wikipedia just to see if there's any important information or anything that I missed. Vincent Canby of the New York Times didn't like it. He says that it was an off day and an off film for the director, Claude Chabrol. But he also says he saw an English dub and it was re-edited from the French version, so it's hard to say exactly, obviously. Yeah, I mean, okay, reading the plot summary on Wikipedia, there's really nothing here that I didn't get, but it is a very short summary. So I don't know. That's what part of the thing about this project, and I knew this when I got into it, is that some of these movies were going to be harder to find. Some of them, just I wouldn't have the same amount of information about them as I do other movies. So yeah, that's what this episode is, and that's what this project is. We've gotten lucky so far that all the movies I've been able to see and everything. So yeah. I guess all that's left is to pick the next movie. Okay, I'm just gonna, you know how I do this. I've had some really long Zoom meetings lately, and I always, whenever I just mess with all this stuff on my desk just to have something to do. So I can't find my green and yellow dye anywhere. So I'm going to switch to this slightly green and red one. And I guess that's just how it'll be, that every 5 episodes we get a new dye that we use. Obviously still have the big boy. Yeah, so let's roll first, and then, let's see. Never going to be able to do that. Oh, lucky number 1. Randomize this. A mystery film. A lot of crossover between crime and mystery, but when you're trying to think of 20 movie genres, I think you're permitted the crossover. All right, I'm gonna roll the big boy. Not gonna be able to keep that in frame either. I'm gonna slide it right over. That's number 93. This is at a weird angle. This is what always happens. So let's do this. Oh, let's just do Atlantic City real fast. No, I'm picking Atlantic City. I'll put it on the list later. It doesn't matter because that's not the thing we got. I'm having a hard time scrolling. Okay, we'll do it manually. Not a movie I would have thought was from 2006, so I'm looking forward to watching this. Oh, Brian De Palma. He's famous and probably a monster, right? Cool. I've heard a lot of stuff. I've heard a lot about the Black Dahlia murderer over the years, but I have never seen the movie. I don't know many of the facts. It's a lady killer, I think. Is it a Lover's Lane sort of thing? I don't know. I really don't know much about this movie going in, so I'm looking forward to watching this for next time. I'll see you all next time. I can see right now that this movie is available to rent at least on YouTube, so I know I'll be able to watch it in a way that is good. yeah, I'll talk to you later. Thank you for watching Jake Watches Movies, recommended by Jake's Movie Picker 2K, episode 5. Bye. I always like to do a little something to my appearance that's like a nod to the movie, if you haven't noticed. Didn't have time this week. Sorry.